Hello, so in today's video I'm going to look at the People's Crusade. So the last video we dealt with the speech of Pope Urban at Clermont. We also then looked at some of the main reasons why people went on the Crusade, in particular focusing on the Crusader leaders, these aristocratic military leaders, people like Bohemond of Taranto, Ademir Lepoix, the papal legate, Raymond of Toulouse, Robert of Normandy, etc., etc. So they're kind of the famous crusaders. However, there was another group who went on this crusade, the First Crusade, which is known as the People's Crusade. So Pope Urban makes his speech at Clermont. He sends letters out to all the, top people across Europe. But there seems to have been quite a large number of kind of preachers and stuff who got very excited by this. And as we know, it is an age where people thought the world was going to end, etc., etc. And so lots of preachers kind of went around. We don't quite know what they all said. And perhaps the most famous one of these is Peter the Hermit. Now, Peter the Hermit, he was born in Amiens, which is in northeast France. And within 6 months, he gathered about 15,000 people to actually go on a crusade. So he seemed to work really quickly. Now, one contemporary wrote this about Peter the Hermit, not exactly very flattering, so just let me read it to you. He said, outdoors he wore a woolen tunic, which revealed his ankles, and above it a hood. He wore a cloak to cover his upper body, and a bit of his arms. But his feet were bare. He drank wine and ate fish, but scarcely ever ate bread. This man, partly because of his reputation, partly because of his preaching, assembled a very large army. And as I said, within 6 months of the Pope Urban speech, he does gather 15,000 army. Now, this army were not kind of skilled military knights of the main crusade. They were mostly peasants. So not well armed, not well equipped, no kind of military kind of ordering, inspired by the words of Peter the Hermit. Like I said earlier on, we don't actually know what he said. There's no surviving manuscripts of his sermons. We don't know whether he just preached the Pope's message or whether he went a bit kind of rogue, I suppose, went a bit overexcited. We've got no idea. But he seems to be an inspirational preacher, if nothing else. So, the journey of his crusade was as I said, spring of 1096, he sets out from northeast France. They travel through Germany, mainly through the Rhineland. Here, a number of massacres or pogroms take place against the Jews. Peter the Hermit himself does not seem to have been a great fan of doing this. But even so, Jews were massacred at Worms and Speyer and other German kind of towns and cities. When they reached the Danube and into Hungary on the way down to Constantinople, the king of Hungary is not that keen on them coming into his territories, because not only have they killed and massacred Jews, but they've also been looting property, burning houses, stealing food, just general kind of disorder. A number of them are killed by the king of Hungary. There's a little bit of a dispute that takes place, a little bit of a battle which takes place. However, they pass through the Danube, they continue looting and pillaging as they go. Once they reach the territories of Byzantium, Peter the Hermit does try to put some kind of order. However, not to much avail. Looting and pillaging takes place around the city of Nish, Nish, and eventually on the 1st of August 1096, the remains of his, I want to say the rabble is not quite the right word, but actually I suspect it might be, arrive at the gates of Constantinople. Here they meet some other, perhaps more well-armed troops who have kind of got ahead of the main crusade, people like Walter Sansovar with 500 knights. Now, this People's Crusade of Peter the Hermit is not really what Emperor Alexius was kind of expecting. However, according to Thomas Asbury's book, he thinks that Peter the Hermit did build a relationship with Emperor Alexius. The emperor agrees to supply them with resources, food and water, but he advised them to wait until the main crusades arrive. However, after about 4 or 5 days, looting and pillaging is taking place by Peter the Hermit's kind of followers, and the emperor's quite glad to get rid of them. So he ships them across the Bosphorus and basically says, I suggest you wait across here until the main crusaders come. However, they don't. Peter the Hermit does stay in Constantinople, but the rest of them all march off, that's probably not the right word, wander off, pillaging and looting as they go, because they're now on Muslim territory, so they're more than happy to pillage even more. And to cut a long story short, they then hacked down by the Seljuk Turks not far from the city of Nicaea. Most of them are massacred, and that is the end of the People's Crusade. So, exam questions are not going to ask you to describe what happened to the People's Crusade, but you might get one of those 10 markers or something saying what's the main reason why it failed or something of that nature. And I think there's probably 3 or 4 reasons you could use to explain why this crusade fails. I think the first one is that they're not a trained military force. Yes, you had Walter Sansevier and 500 knights, but the vast majority of them are not well trained military kind of people. They're mainly peasants, which again makes them an easy target for the Seljuk Turks. Apparently, Walter Sansevier has 7 arrows stuck in him when they are attacked. So, if it does seem that the Seljuk Turks were quite well equipped and quite prepared, so they're kind of no match against that force. Secondly, I would say that Peter the Hermit might have been a good preacher, but he's a really ineffective leader. He doesn't stop the pogroms against the Jews. There's this dispute with the King of Hungary, where a number of them get killed. So again, you're depleting your numbers and you're not exactly making friends as you're going along. He seems unable to control them in Constantinople, so the emperor is quite keen to get rid of them. All of this would suggest that he's a really ineffective leader in terms of military side. As I said, might be a good preacher, don't want to take that away from him, but not really a military leader. However, he does negotiate good supplies from Emperor Alexius, so there might be a bit of a bright spot there, possibly. And I think the third reason is that they failed to wait. If they'd been better behaved in Constantinople, they might have been better waiting until the main crusade forces arrived. Or even if they'd been shipped across to the Bosphorus, they probably could have held out on the coast there for a while, again until the main crusaders arrived. But they don't. They seem to be more kind of motivated by zeal, religious excitement possibly. But unless you've got the military force to back you up, against the Seljuk Turks, you've got no chance. And so that's the main reasons I would suggest why the People's Crusade ends in failure.